Let's jump forward in time to November 2013. It was an auspicious year. The 8th generation console was about to launch. Gamers were looking forward to playing future classics. Rise, Son of Rome. Nah. And Zumba, Fitness World Party. But something else was happening. Matt Lees is a male who feasted on the sweet taste of privilege. At the University of Kent, he obtained a degree in psychology, where he was taught how to use language to influence others. He worked at Frank PR as an account executive. He got a job at the official Xbox magazine UK, where he worked for 2 years. In April 2013, something made Matt Lees very angry.
Hi, I'm Chandra from the official Nintendo magazine in the UK.
Chandra Nair, the British Asian editor of the official Nintendo magazine, shared a tweet which showed him drawn as a Lego character to promote Lego City Undercover's release on the Nintendo 3DS. Matt Lees tweeted, "The guy who reviews Lego City agrees to get turned into a Lego City character. Not a great practice. I don't know, it feels a bit woofy." This was a legally safe way to throw mud at Chandra that there was a stink about it. Many people working in the UK media are Lee's Twitter followers, and he understands how a Twitter following can be weaponized.
Which saw you playing this bizarre, large bosom girl.
He regularly shares his views on what constitutes great journalistic practice, despite not having any experience or qualifications in this field. Matt Lees implying Nair had behaved improperly or unethically by suggesting this reward of being made into a Lego character may have been a payment for a positive review. In other words, a bribe. Wesley Ian Paul is a Eurogamer editor who has now been with the company for over a decade, in which it has had an abysmal record of hiring British blacks and British Asians. He replied with nothing but Matt Lees' Twitter handle. What he was doing was very crafty. He was promoting or signal boosting Matt Lees' claims to all his thousands of followers without actually adding his own comment that might leave his employer, Eurogamer, accountable. Liam Robertson, a long-time industry contributor, replied to Lees, "Total overreaction. It's just a bit of art. Be careful what you say. Chandra's one of the good guys." Chandra replied, "The guy who reviewed Lego Wii U 3 months ago agrees to nothing. Nintendo UK had some fun with artwork for Lego 3DS launch day. Nothing to see here." Matt Lees backtracked into an embarrassing for him but necessary apology. Apologies for confusion. For launch events, publishers arrange all kinds of promotional activities for the media, which happens right across the industry. He knew this, but what was it about Chandra Nair that made Matt Lees single him out?
Matt Lees then joined Videogamer.com to work on its new YouTube channel.
A source familiar with Lees said he had produced video content that he felt was highbrow, that by its nature targeted other university-educated white males, which his peers praised. As an employee, besides his monthly salary, he did not profit from it, and he felt taken advantage of. He was also aware of the growing success of KSI. Here he was grafting to make witty, pithy, arty videos only for his employer to reap the profits. And then he would look at KSI making FIFA football videos and acting silly and growing a massive audience, and compared it to the hours he took to plan and make his own videos and add witticisms. He regarded KSI's success as unfair, unjustified, not merited. A source said Lees felt there was something wrong with the system, meaning YouTube and the video games industry that allowed KSI to flourish. Almost a year after Stephen Totilo succeeded in cancelling Razor's sponsorship of KSI, the British content creator had grown from 600,000 to almost 4 million subscribers, which is unbelievable growth. At this time, there was probably little to no black staff in the established games media in a permanent position, although 2 British Asians were working for Future in different capacities. KSI was speaking to an audience that Future and Eurogamer had turned their back on.
Well, I noticed there was a substantial lack of black people commentating over FIFA, so I was like, you know what, let me fill that gap in.
Matt Lees saw the encroaching threat of independent YouTubers, and even though he was now producing YouTube content, he saw his work as more legitimate as it was for a proper website. He learned from industry sources that KSI had got a highly lucrative partnership with one of the highest profile companies, Microsoft, for their upcoming Xbox One console. What Totilo had done to further his own career, 1 year later, Lees would now revisit. He put together a video polemic to put pressure on Microsoft to cancel its sponsorship of KSI. Watch this clip from the start.
He's used for corporate gigs quite extensively now. This is a difference between traditional media and YouTubers. There's a lot of belief a lot of the time that traditional media are now somehow corrupt and their opinions are not worth having, whereas YouTubers represent this kind of fresh, new vision, untainted by the politics. And strictly speaking, this just isn't true. A lot of YouTubers now kind of quite openly having these little deals and sponsorships. The whole thing is very fuzzy and very odd. You know what? That's another issue for another time.
There is real anger in Lee's voice on account of two issues. Notice that the first thing that becomes abundantly clear is that Matt Lees was expressing his unhappiness that YouTubers were more readily seen as trustworthy by the public and not tainted, which he says isn't true. He doesn't like the sponsorships, which he calls fuzzy. The meaning of this is that there is something underhand. He puts his idea out there without giving any evidence to cast dispersions on KSI's character. Now that the creator economy is established, YouTube audiences are familiar with brand sponsorships. KSI was not doing product reviews with undisclosed sponsorships, so this was an attack on his character, and it suggested that KSI's deals were improper or dishonest or criminal.
But the issue here is the fact that this guy seems to be getting a lot of corporate gigs from very family-friendly companies. He does a substantial amount of work with EA for FIFA. He's done stuff with BT Sports. He was sent out to cover E3 for Channel 5's The Gadget Show. And last night he was part of the live show to launch the Xbox One in London. And all of this would be completely fine if not for the fact that he's quite an unpleasant character.
From this we learn more about Lee's motivations. He goes through and lists KSI's gigs. Something becomes abundantly clear. His fixation with KSI sounds like jealousy at his success. Additionally, what comes out is the snobbish surrounding mass market video gamers, the people who are content to play FIFA or Call of Duty, which he regards as lowbrow. He spent hours putting together videos like everything Bioshock Infinite gets wrong, then KSI cracks a joke or scores a goal in FIFA and will get hundreds of thousands of views. Lees expresses his bitterness to Microsoft and the other brands now that they are working with mass market gamers.
Microsoft have always been a family brand, and now with the Xbox One more than ever, they are really trying to push this whole angle. This isn't about teenage boy gamers anymore. This is about a family entertainment media system. You know, they've kind of abandoned us.
Matt Lees wanted Microsoft and all the other brands who sponsored KSI to know that he was not family-friendly. Matt Lees' comments here reflect a snobbish industry view, that video games coverage should be the preserve of carefully vetted experts as they have a so-called proper understanding of the medium and the proper vocabulary to discuss it. Lees hated seeing coverage of the video games opening up to people who were not interested in discussing games as art. He hated coverage of FIFA and Call of Duty, which, like many of his peers, he feels demeans the industry with their mass market appeal.
Yo, your boy KSI Legit ABT!
This was an elitist industry that had been gatekeeping who was allowed in, so KSI coming from nowhere and stepping over their fence, stepping over their rules, their friendships, caused great fury. Behind the scenes, Matt Lees has expressed great anger towards incels. Whilst always within the law, Matt Lees displays behaviour that is similar. A privileged white man, unhappy and angry at systematic failures in society that make him feel disadvantaged and marginalised. Where incels focus on strong women and self-actualising in society, Lees' rage focuses on KSI's success in money and in life. Lees then brings up past incidents from the previous year as examples of KSI's unsuitability. However, at the time in 2012, KSI had issued a statement and he had said he wouldn't do it again. So what Lees was doing was going back to material from the previous year. Lees used clips to suggest that KSI was sexually dangerous. Again, the woman was willing. So let me refer you to the source used earlier who said that the discomfort came from a young black man being sexually suggested with a white woman.
I knew this was going to be a question! You
Lees then goes back to past discussion from a year ago, dismissing that the girl had given her permission to KSI, and how he had made a rape face joke, that KSI makes women feel unsafe, that he is not family friendly. So Matt Lees is trying to convey that his motivation for the video is to protect women and families, to make them feel safe. Let's get this out of the way. Regardless if you find the jokes funny or not, KSI is a law-abiding citizen. He doesn't have a criminal record. He is not a criminal. He's not a threat to women. And if a white woman wants him to touch her, that's her business.
And the fact that this girl gave him permission to motorboat her. You know what? That is the part of the video that I have the least problem with.
But again, although he says it doesn't bother him to give it so much attention, it does bother Lees. And what Lees is trying to do is illustrate that KSI is bad, a threat, a danger. And while Lees' extreme reaction to KSI was not based on him being black, he should be cognizant that the exaggerated language he used to describe KSI as both criminal and dangerous was and is used to oppress black people. His criminalization of KSI was dangerous because it was unfounded and based on stereotypes. Matt Lees' video is also full of self-aggrandizement about his intentions, his ability to see what others don't, about his good character.
This is a company using fairly seedy and dodgy marketing techniques in the hope that no one will notice. And they're right. Nobody does notice, because only people like me, people in the specialist games industry area, know that this guy is like this, and yet now he's on television.
Matt Lee's anger at KSI's financial success has nothing to do with KSI being black. Lee conveys that it is because he is not appropriate. In fact, he doesn't just say this once, he says it over and over again.
He's just not acceptable for kind of, more mainstream events. And that's what makes it pretty unacceptable that they have aligned themselves. They are trying to use this guy who clearly is not suitable. He's clearly not suitable.
What must be underlined is KSI was just about the only high-profile person of colour in the video game industry at the time. There were many bad things about Matt Lee's video, but then Matt Lee said something that was truly shocking, truly disgusting.
You're still an awful human being who should probably be killed.
Let's look closely at what's happening here. Matt Lee has said KSI is deserving of death. I would say this is an overreaction. So how was it intended? Let's look at the context. If a close friend pranks you, you might say, I'm going to kill you, but with a kind of expression of delight. That's an acceptable use of the phrase. Or if you're in a fight situation where you're about to get into a brawl, you might tell the other person you're going to kill them. When you are at risk of physical violence, that's an understandable use. But here, this was Matt Lee making an industry-wide plea to different media companies and publishers and hardware manufacturers to press the idea that KSI's jokes from the previous year were inappropriate and therefore he should be killed. Let me underline what's going on. Matt Lee's video is effectively his virtual workplace, his virtual office, a staff room between him and everybody else in the cottage industry, and he quite seriously is expressing his wish for summary justice on KSI, and doesn't even consider that this is inappropriate, unprofessional, and overreaction. Matt Lee's had no self-awareness that his own behaviour was wrong, because he had been enabled and empowered by an all-office culture that endorsed him. And whilst Matt Lee's comments were not racially motivated, the other end of KSI as a dangerous creature, as subhuman, as a threat to women who deserve summary justice to be murdered, Matt Lee has equated KSI to being an animal. This is an example of the dehumanization of black people as something not quite equal to normal people. And nobody at Video Game or Future thought to say to Matt Lee, that's not okay. And nobody at Eurogame or Kotaku thought to say that's not okay. And nobody at Microsoft's Xbox department thought to say, Matt Lee, what you're doing is inappropriate, it's disgusting. But who else was there in the industry to temper his words? Since then, there has been a growing sense of awareness in society, conversations in society, about how the systemic treatment of black people can affect their opportunities in life and put them in danger. Following the murder of George Floyd, African-American Alexis J. Hogue, a Columbia University attorney and civil rights expert, explains what dehumanizing black people can do. To hold people in bondage as property, you had to look at them as less than human, and the level of dehumanization that prosecutors use to refer to black criminal defendants is striking. It's the verbiage used that the defendant was circling and hunting the victim. What hunts in circles? Animals. When you can dehumanize an individual, of course you can put the person away for a long time. You can sentence him or her to death, and of course you can put your knee on somebody's neck for 9 minutes because you see them as less than human. It's a combination of the dehumanization of black people with the presumption of dangerousness and criminality. Whilst there will be those who think an 18-year-old kid making distasteful jokes is deserving of death, I disagree. It came easy to Matt Lee to comment on his desire to kill Olatunji. This is utterly vile and reveals so much about his grim character, and it can regularly be found on social media, wishing death upon others. Matt Lee's words carried a sentiment of othering. He dehumanized KSI, and his compatriots in the industry were lapping up his every word. What was it about Chandane that made Matt Lees call him Whiffy? What was it about Olajide William Olatunji that made Matt Lees call him Fuzzy? What was it about the British video games media that made them say nothing?